another edition of Is This a Great Game or What? With the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian. I'm his son, Jeff Kurkjian. Dad, we are into the World Series. Dodgers, Yankees. Wow. And our guest is a World Series hero. Played in one of the best World Series of all time. David Ross was the catcher for the Cubs back when they broke the curse in 2016 in Cleveland. So he is a perfect guest to talk about being a World Series champion.
Absolutely. And Rossi was one of my teammates at ESPN. I'm not sure I ever had a teammate who made me laugh as many times as David Ross did. And he will do that today on our podcast, but he will also give us some sort of context on what it's like to play in the World Series. And remember, Jeff, he's the only player ever to hit a home run in Game 7 of the World Series and then retire. He will tell us the whole story about that.
And not to mention, in one of the most legendary World Series Game 7s ever, given the excitement, given the rain delay, given the extra innings, and, of course, given the breaking of the curse for the Chicago Cubs. So, David Ross joining us on this episode. Really excited that you're here. Make sure to hit the follow and the subscribe button, always for free. And I want to take a quick moment to shout out Carl. Okay, so Carl Costner, he is a big fan of Is This a Great Game or What, Dad? And he sent us T-shirts. Now, obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see it, but you can also watch on YouTube, and you can go at Great Game or What on Instagram. I'll put up a picture of it. It says, did I ever tell you I went to Walter Johnson High School?
All right. So for those of you who don't know the backstory here, I went to Walter Johnson High School in Bethesda, Maryland, named after the greatest pitcher of all time. And I mentioned that so many times in games that I've done with the mischievous Carl Ravitch that finally I just turned it into a running joke where I would say, hey, did I ever tell you I went to Walter Johnson High School? And now Ravi, like in regular conversation on or off the air, will just look at me and go, did I ever tell you I went to Walter Johnson High School? So that's the backstory behind this T-shirt. Carl Costner, thank you so much for sending this. This means so much. I'll be wearing mine all the time. And I'm sure, Jeff, we're going to have to get one for Todd Frazier because I've already given him a fleece pullover with Walter Johnson High School on it. So Todd's a collector in his own right. So we got to get him one of those. And we should get Ravi one since he's played along with the joke for so long.
Thank you so much, Carl. Dad, we got to jump right into the takeaways. Of course, we're in the middle of a World Series here, and one of which you said could be one of the greatest of all time, and Game 1 was evident of that.
Right. This is the first time in 43 years that the Dodgers and the Yankees have played in the World Series, and we promised with all the star power, 5 former MVPs. No World Series has ever had that. We're going to have, I believe, 7 future Hall of Famers on these rosters. That includes Clayton Kershaw. So we were expecting something great given the star power, but I don't think anyone could have expected a Game 1 that was that great. Jeff, that's one of the greatest World Series games ever played. It is certainly the greatest Game 1 of the World Series since, appropriately, Game 1 in 1988 when Kirk Gibson, pinch hitting, hobbling around the bases, hit a walk-off home run to beat Dennis Eckersley. But the Freddie Freeman Grand Slam, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, has to be the greatest Grand Slam in the history of baseball.
Wow.
And it just made for the greatest game. There were so many amazing elements. And Jeff, I'm going to test you on this. We did Baseball Tonight before Game 1, and we had to do our headline for Baseball Tonight, like what's going to happen in the game. So Greg Colley, our producer, because I said Giancarlo Stanton is going to hit a home run. And, he had hit a home run in 3 straight games and had 5 postseason homers this year going into Game 1. So Greg gave me this headline to put up there. He said, say, like a G6. And, of course, I say, what in the world does that mean? And he goes, oh, everyone knows that's East Movement. Far East movement.
East movement.
Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Popping bottles in the ice. Like a blizzard. Yeah, everybody knows.
Everybody knows
what G6. Like a G6. Nah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Big shout out, Greg Colley, Far East movement. I'm here for it.
But Jeff, just to make sure no one thinks I'm some disingenuous guy, I'm the least cool person on the earth. I'm so square, I'm divisible by 4, that I made sure that everybody knew that I didn't come up with this headline. Greg Colley did. Otherwise, people go, he doesn't know anything about music. Okay. And of course, Giancarlo Stanton did hit a home run that gave him 4 games in a row in the postseason in which he hit a homer. That's the second time he's done that. No one else has had 2 4-game streaks with a homer in the postseason. Twice done that. That's what Stanton did, and that gave him 6. So like a G6 actually was the correct headline, but it was the wrong headline because Freddie Freeman hit a walk-off homer, and that was the end of that. So that's our first takeaway. Game 1 was such a tremendous game. Anyone who was there will never forget that for the rest of their lives.
And it lived up to expectations on how exciting the hype has been for this World Series.
Right. And of course, before the game, Fernando Valenzuela, the late Fernando Valenzuela, was honored before the game by the crowd at Dodger Stadium. It was a tremendous ceremony. Let's just make sure, Jeff, we understand who Valenzuela is. He's not the greatest pitcher of all time. He's not the greatest Dodger pitcher of all time, but he's one of the most important pitchers of all time and one of the most famous pitchers. Jeff, I was covering baseball in 1981 when Fernando Mania was going on, and I've never seen anything quite like it. As I've told you before, his first 8 starts that season, he went 8-0 with 8 complete games and 5 shutouts. He allowed 4 runs in 72 innings, and every time he went out there, it was an event. And he brought an entire country, Mexico, to the Dodgers. And now Mexico and the Dodgers became cohorts in this unbelievable story that Valenzuela wrote in 1981. But the best part of 1981, Jeff, was that in the World Series that year, in Game 3, Valenzuela beat the Yankees 5-4. He threw a complete game, which just can never happen anymore in the major leagues.
Right.
And he gave up 16 base runners, 9 hits, 7 walks, and they still left him in there to get the final out of the game because they still knew no matter how many struggles he had in that game, 147 pitches, he was still the best guy to be out there to get the last out. That's all you need to know about Fernando Valenzuela, one of the most iconic pitchers of all time. And the last thing, and way off the topic, Jeff, the final pitcher that the Yankees used in Game 1 was Nestor Cortez. The first pitcher that they used in Game 2 was Carlos Rodon, and they were both born on December the 10th, which happens to be Pop-Pop's birthday.
Your birthday.
So this is very self-serving. Carlos and I have had several chats about sharing the same birthday. Of course, my birthday was about 40 years before his. Hardly the point. I just thought it was kind of odd that the 2 Yankee pitchers who pitched in a row, one in one game, one in the next, and I share the same birthday.
That is incredible. Dad, I want to go into the game changer of the week. It's the one app every sports team needs, Game Changer. You can go to gc.com, free live video streaming with integrated scoreboard. You've got advanced scorekeeping, live games, season stats, and for coaches, Game Changer is 100% free. So check it out for your team, gc.com. Who's the game changer of the week?
Well, I'm not sure there's a way around this. Freddie Freeman is the game changer because, as we just said, he hit the only walk-off grand slam in World Series history, only the second one in postseason history. And he did it at Dodger Stadium, where Kirk Gibson hit the famous home run. I was there, of course, in 1988. He could barely run because of a hamstring injury. He hit this home run off of Dennis Eckersley. And there were so many similarities because Freddie Freeman is battling an ankle injury and he can't run very well at all. He can't move side to side. And he hit the first pitch from Nestor Cortez for a grand slam. And I'm just so fascinated by how all of that works, that Freddie Freeman would do that. And remember, Jeff, his son, Max, 3 years old, had a horrendous illness this year that took Freddie Freeman away from the team. So if anyone's going to hit a walk-off homer in grand slam in game 1 of the World Series with all he's been through, Freddie Freeman is the guy. And amazingly, Jeff, my friend Rob Bradford looked this up. 3 Dodgers on the team who played this year, Gavin Stone, Teoscar Hernandez, and Jack Flaherty, who started game 1, are all born on October the 15th, which is the date that Kirk Gibson hit his famous home run.
Wow.
How bizarre is that?
That is kind of crazy to think about, and awesome that you were able to find that out. And my Freddie Freeman takeaway from this is he is now homered as of game 2 in 4 consecutive World Series games dating back to 2021 with the Braves in that World Series. That's tied for the second longest streak. Reggie Jackson and Lou Gehrig also had 4 at one point. He trails only George Springer, who did so in 5 straight World Series games.
Way to bring the knowledge, Jeff. I'm proud of you. Now,
it only took me an entire season to bring my own Kurkjian.
So, Jeff, it got me to thinking of, I love Grand Slams. They've always fascinated me. So I came up with the 5 most famous Grand Slams ever. Wow, they're my 5 favorite Grand Slams ever. They're not the 5 biggest, don't get me wrong, but Freddie Lynn in the 83 All-Star game hit a Grand Slam off of Atlee Hammaker, and it still amazes me. That's the only Grand Slam ever hit in the All-Star game. We've been playing this since 1933. You would think there would have been another one. So that's number 5 on the list. Number 4, and most young people would never know this, but Tony Cloninger, a Braves pitcher, his famous Grand Slam was the second Grand Slam that he hit in one game in 1966. Now, keep in mind, Jeff, that Pete Rose and Derek Jeter each hit 1 Grand Slam in their career, covering over 28,000 at-bats.
Wow.
And a pitcher hit 2 Grand Slams in one game. He pitched 9 innings that day, of course, and drove in 9 runs. I mean, the pitching line and the batting line for Tony Cloninger was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I met a gentleman this past weekend who is a big fan of baseball, and we got to talking about the podcast, and he said what we always say, Dad, isn't it amazing that this game has been going on 140 years and we're still finding things that have never happened before? That's what makes this game great.
Jeff, again, for the first time in baseball history, that is my favorite sentence in the whole world, because if nothing's ever happened before and we got to see it, that's incredible. So on April 23rd, 1999, you probably remember this. You were actually alive. Fernando Tatis Sr. hit 2 Grand Slams in 1 inning. He's the only player to hit 2 Grand Slams in 1 inning in baseball history. And the amazing thing is, it took place at Dodger Stadium, where the only walk-off Grand Slam has now ever been hit. And he hit the 2 Grand Slams off the same pitcher, Chan-Ho Park. Jeff, seriously, how is any pitcher left in a game to give up 2 Grand Slams? We take our pitchers out now so quickly. They left him in for a Grand Slam. They left him in to load the bases again, and then he left him in for Fernando Tatis Sr. to hit a 2nd Grand Slam. And one of our guests this year, Jim Palmer, of course, never gave up a Grand Slam in nearly 4,000 innings, and Chan-Ho Park gave up 2 in 1 inning. That's phenomenal. Nelson Cruz, who we talked about on this show before, 2011 against the Tigers in the ALCS, he hit a walk-off grand slam, which at that point, and until Freddie Freeman hit his, was the only walk-off grand slam in the history of the postseason. And it was that grand slam that helped the Rangers get to the World Series in 2011. And of course, Freddie Freeman hit the biggest grand slam, I believe, in baseball history, Jeff. I'm not sure there's a way around this, but the really fun part for me about this is that Freddie Freeman hit 232 home runs in his major league career before he hit his first grand slam.
Wow.
How about that? So he told me when I asked him, I said, Freddie, you're aware you've never hit a grand slam. This is years ago. And he goes, well, of course I'm aware. My whole team makes me aware of it every time I go to the plate with the bases loaded. And he said, I promise you I'll get a beer shower when I finally hit one. So, a year later, he hit one. And then get this, Jeff, his next home run was also a grand slam. So he had never hit one in his first 232. Then his next two home runs were grand slams. And since his first one, he has hit 7 regular season grand slams, the most, Jeff, of anyone in baseball, having never hit one in his first 232. Does that amaze you or not?
That's incredible. It's like he's making up for lost time.
Yeah,
I want to bring up Nelson Cruz, though, because last week on the podcast, you had talked about how when you were calling the ALCS on ESPN Radio, that you ran into Nelson Cruz in the bathroom and had made a note about it, and Ravi and Eddie were making fun because the story was just that. There was a lot of home runs in the bathroom because Nelson Cruz was in the bathroom with you, and Eduardo sent this video.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, team, where are you? I was waiting for you at the bathroom.
He ran into Nelson Cruz, and Nelson said, I was waiting for you in the bathroom, Tim.
Jeff, this was just a throwaway observation that I made in the 8th inning of a postseason game, just so my teammates Eduardo and Ravi would take it and run with it. Instead, they just started laughing at the absurdity of the sentence that I told to them. And now it's turned into this. And I told you, Jeff, I did 3 radio shows the next day after that game. And they led with the Nelson Cruz story that I saw him in the bathroom. There were 450 homers in the bathroom. And now Eduardo is interviewing Nelson Cruz. Hey, Tim, where are you? I was in the bathroom. I was looking for you. It's the dumbest thing ever.
Dad, I want to move on to, is this a great sim or what, with our friends at Strat-O-Matic, the market leader in sports simulations. Earlier in the season, we did 9 Kyle Schwarbers against 9 Luis Arises to kind of do power versus contact for an entire season. How would that offensive team perform? We decided to have some fun with that again, but take team Aaron Judge and team Shohei Ohtanis offensively for 162 games. What would their record be? And team Judge surprised me with an 84-78 record, 589 home runs from the 9 judges that were on the roster. And that beat, Dad, the 78 and 84 Ohtanis, even though a slightly higher batting average at 316, 500 homers on the dot, 6 games, 6 less wins than team Judge.
Jeff, you're telling me that you get 9 Shohei Ohtanis just to hit, and your team wins 78 games. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of blows my mind. And even to that matter, Dad, 9 judges only get 84 wins.
I am really surprised by this. It would be different if they were, we had Judge playing second base and Judge playing shortstop, but you're saying they're not playing defense, they're just hitting.
Yeah, what they did, and this is what makes Strat-O-Matic so great, is they basically set a standard, right? Like just a generic defensive team. They all face the same pitchers for 106, the same rotation of pitchers for 162 games. So everything else was basically I guess a placebo, right? So they have the same defensive team. So in theory, same amount of errors, same amount of skill. And yeah, it looks like with 84 wins, Team Judge takes it on with 89 home runs. The most home runs in a season by a team. Quick Google search, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Braves and the Twins, 307.
Right.
And
so he hit they both hit
Team Ohtani 500.
They hit roughly twice as many as the most by a team
exactly.
ever. That's not surprising.
You got a best of all Tim this week?
Yeah, with David Ross on, I mean, David Ross was a backup catcher for the most part in his career, and a really good one. He also had, one of the biggest hits in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series that helped the Cubs win for the first time in well over 100 years. So I just came up with a hidden hero. It's nothing clever here at each position. So our catcher is Pat Borders. Now, let's be clear, Jeff. All these guys are good major league players, okay? But to win the World Series MVP or do something like that, they probably went above their talent to do it at the most important times, including Pat Borders, good major league catcher, won the MVP for the Blue Jays in the 1992 World Series. He hit .450. Our first baseman is Steve Pearce, who was acquired by the Red Sox in midseason, and he was the MVP of the 2018 World Series. He hit .333 with 3 homers, 8 RBIs. The second baseman is Brian Doyle, 1978, replacing an injured Willie Randolph. He went 7 for 16 in the World Series. And remember, this is a guy whose career average was 161 in 199 at-bats. But in the biggest games he ever played, he was at his best. The third baseman is David Freese, who had a historic 2011 World Series. And again, really good player, but hit the triple to tie the game over Nelson Cruz's head in the 9th inning, and then the walk-off homer in the 11th inning to win it. The shortstop is David Eckstein, who was the MVP of the 2006 World Series. Jeff, I mean, David Eckstein is like 5'7" and a really good player. Don't get me wrong. But to be on the same team with, Albert Pujols, and yet the 5'7" shortstop was the MVP of the World Series over the Hall of Fame to be first baseman, just is why baseball is so great. It's like Steve Kerr, who I told you, I love Steve Kerr, one of the great shooters ever, but he can't win the MVP of the NBA Finals when he's on the same team as Michael Jordan. So it's not comparable, but you get the idea. All right, outfield, Mickey Hatcher, one of the funniest people ever. 1988 Dodgers, batted .386 and hit homers in games 1 and 5. Scott Pasednik, 2005 White Sox, had a great series, had the second most hits of any White Sox, and hit a walk-off homer off Brad Lidge in Game 2. And Travis Jankowski, last year of the Rangers, the best fourth outfielder in the game, was pressed into service in Game 4 because of an injury to Adolis Garcia. He got 2 huge hits. They won the game 11-7, and they went on to win the World Series in 5 games. And our 2 pitchers, of course, Don Larson, who pitched a perfect game in Game 5, 1956. He was 30-40 lifetime at the time of that perfect game. So he's a good major league pitcher, Jeff. Don't get me wrong, but a 30-40 guy shouldn't be the first guy, the only guy ever to pitch a perfect game in the World Series. And the last is Johnny Padres, who was 9-10 in 1955, and he was picked to pitch Game 7 against the arch rival Yankees, who had just dominated the Dodgers in the World Series before, and they won that series because Johnny Padres threw a shutout in Game 7 to beat the Yankees 2-0. So to repeat, every one of these guys is a big leaguer, but these guys are not the most decorated big leaguers, but they sure came up big at the biggest time. Before we get to David Ross's interview, Jeff, I just want to make it clear how David Ross made such a name for himself as a backup catcher. So I came up with the Mount Rushmore of backup catchers in baseball history. Number one, of course, is Bob Uecker, who was a much better player than he gave himself credit for, but his self-deprecating sense of humor is what carried him. Jeff, when I was growing up, he used to be on the Johnny Carson show, the Tonight Show, every once in a while. And it was the funniest thing of all time. And Johnny asked him, like, how did you get started, in your major league career? And he said, well, I got signed to play Major League Baseball, $2,000. And he said, and my old man didn't have that kind of money at the time, as opposed to recognizing they were paying him to join the St. Louis Cardinals. So, and Johnny asked him once, like, what were the highlights of your career? And he said, this is on the Tonight Show. He said, I got out of a rundown once against the Mets, and I saw a fan fall out of the upper deck in Philadelphia. Those were the highlights of his career.
Gosh.
And Jeff, I made a speech in Milwaukee one night, and Bob Uecker was the MC of the show. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. He winged the entire he was the MC, winged the entire thing. So they had just traded Jeremy Burnitz, one of their best players, and Bob had to try to calm down the crowd. He goes, look, everyone has a different side to each story. He said, even I do. He said, 50% of the people who saw me play thought I was the worst player they've ever seen, and the other 50% thought I was a disgrace to the uniform. So that's Bob Uecker for you. He's the great. He's the most famous backup catcher of all time. Number two, of course, Joe Garagiola, who was a good player, one of the great broadcasters ever, a Hall of Fame broadcaster, hosted the Today Show. So he's number two. Number three is, of course, Mo Berg, who played 15 years in the major leagues. And, he's a brilliant man, went to Princeton, all that, and became a spy in World War II. He would fly planes over Germany and take readings and everything else. So he's number three on the list. And David Ross is number four on the list because, of course, he did Dancing with the Stars. He knows Eddie Vedder. He's done a lot of things in his life. And he's our guest coming up. Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And our guest today is my dear friend, David Ross, really good Major League catcher, former manager of the Chicago Cubs, and one of my teammates at ESPN for several years. We laughed and we learned every single night. Rossi, this is my son, Jeff. I gave him this voice and his height, neither one of which is good.
Hey, did you give him the crossover? If you gave him the crossover dribble move, he's going to be fine. That's all you need. That is all you need.
It wasn't until college that I was able to take him to the rim, and I got a couple pounds on him. So I shouldered him at the end when I was driving to the rim, and it didn't make him too happy, right, Dad? That was not a fun day for you.
That's okay. Jeff stole the ball off my dribble once, but most of the time I could beat him off the dribble, which, Rossi, we went over that with our dog, Tito, right?
I was just about to say that. We've already went over this.
Well, tell Jeffrey what you're talking. Tell our guests what you're talking about. These are the conversations we had in between pitches of Major League games.
So we're sitting in the room watching the playoff games, and I think it was 2019. And Tim gets a phone call. He steps out and he comes back. And you can tell he's just a little bit kind of like his brain's distracted and said, man, Ross, I was like, what's wrong, Tim? He's like, my dog just blew out his ACL. My wife took it to the vet and said it's going to cost like $5,000 to fix his ACL. And he looks at me deadpan and goes, I mean, he's not trying to beat anybody off the dribble. Do we have to get this fixed? And I almost peed my pants. Thank God I didn't, because I was going to be on TV for the rest of the day. But we laughed so hard about that. And then, then we started on the dog thing and trying trying to talk about how expensive all that stuff is.
And I also told Rossi the greatest Stephen Wright comedian joke of all time, that he named his dog Stay. So it really confused him. He go, come here, Stay. Come here, Stay. And Rossi, so Rossi and I he would just look at me out of the blue one day and go, come here, Stay. I named my dog Stay. This is what we talked about.
There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense.
Did you realize in becoming a broadcaster, it would be 95% nonsense and 5% baseball broadcasting?
Well, you never know where Timmy's going, because there's so much historical facts and knowledge up in his brain, and then he comes out with the joke of the day of like, come here, Stay, come here. And then I you know what I did and what really shocked me? He started talking about, you guys talked about, you had Cal Ripken on and some famous people and the interactions there. Tim starts talking about his love for basketball, and I was like, oh, I love basketball too. I shoot at the gym before I come in after I get my workout in, and he's like, when, where? And the next thing I know, he's at the 24-hour fitness gym with his bag in hand. He's got the Jordans on. He's laced up. He's got the basketball shorts. He is ready to go. And he starts showing me some moves. I was really impressed. I wish I'd have been able to play some of them pickup games back in the day with the boys.
Right. We had so much fun, Jeff. And since the Dodgers are in the World Series here, Jeff, one night this is 2017. I know Rossi remembers this. We're taking a red eye after a game in L.A., and we're going to Houston. And we're in the we got to get out of the parking lot at Dodger Stadium, which, Rossi, you know how terrible that is. We have no shot to make this flight until Rossi and Mark Teixeira, our other guy on the show, that we get a police escort because we got two major leaguers in the car. And we made the flight.
We made it. That's a lot more. Tex had the he's used to those police escorts. I think he rolled with the Yankees and the high class people he rolls with. But we rolled down the window and we were booking it.
Right.
Yeah. David, I had the chance to go out to dinner with Mark Teixeira and my dad and Carl Ravitch in Las Vegas when the winter meetings were there. I was living in Vegas at the time, doing radio out there. And just talk about, like, next level. Dad and I, when we order red wine, we look at the bottom and the smallest number you can find. He asked for a different menu, I think. He was like, do you have anything else here? I'm like, this is Las Vegas. Are you kidding me? Just a totally different lifestyle than the Kurkjians are used to living.
No doubt. Texas one of a kind. He's the best. I tell you what, you get your dad and Carl in a room and start these two back and forth. It is just comedy for days. They play off each other really well.
Yeah. All right. So, David, speaking of the Dodgers, not everyone remembers that you started your career with the Dodgers, and your first major league homer came as a member of the Dodgers. Now, you need to tell the story about your first major league homer, because if you don't tell it, I will.
Well, I think our good friend Rick Sutcliffe tells it enough for all of us.
Yes, I've heard it.
He was doing the game in the booth. I got my first call up with the Dodgers, and I hadn't played in many games. I had played in my first game, but hadn't gotten a hit yet. I got to start and catch Hideo Nomo. And then in September, we went to Arizona, and we are blowing them out. I think the final score is like 19-2 or something like that, but we're beating them pretty darn bad, and they put me in. I got my first hit in that game off Andy Orpesa, sidearm lefty, a double in the gap, and then I got another at bat later in that game, and lo and behold, they bring in Mark Grace to pitch. Okay, so I'm the rookie. I'm like, I need all the hits I can get. I see him. He steps on the mound. The crowd's going crazy, and you guys know Mark. He is like just a character, and so he gets up there and does the fetter. He comes set and does the fetter on there. The place is rough. It's going crazy, and I forget. It was Tyler Houston, maybe was the first at bat. He popped up, and I remember him just laying it in there. It was like 80 miles an hour, and I'm like, that's right in my wheelhouse. That's my bat speed. Like I may not be able to hit 92, but I can catch up to 80. So he laid that thing right in there, and I'm like, well, if he lays that in there to me, I'm swinging. So sure enough, I get in there. I think Tyler popped up. I get in there and I'm ready. And he lays that first pitch in there, and I almost hit it in that Friday's front row restaurant in left field. I absolutely murdered that ball. And I'm running around first. He's screaming at me the whole way. You got to be kidding me! You're stealing my thunder! Come on, kid! You know, he don't even know who I am. And meanwhile, I'm like, this is Mark Grace on the mound. So I'm sprinting around the base as fast as I can. It was a really real highlight. But my favorite part of the whole story is the next day. We did a radio show together, and I'm a rookie. I hadn't done any radio shows. He got on there, and I think I probably said 5 words in the whole time. He had us laughing. He had the radio host laughing. He was telling the story. I don't even know who this kid is, and he's giving souvenirs to the restaurant up in left field. Still to this day, every time he was doing games for the Diamondbacks and the Cubs, he always used to say, no matter where I was a career 220 hitter, and he's saying, that's the best hitter on their team, David Ross. That's the guy you got to look out for.
Right. Now, the way Sut tells the story is that during the game, Mark Grace, who's dear friends with Sut, looks up into the press box and motions to Sut, who's broadcasting the game. What should I throw this guy? I don't even know who he is. So Sut says, throw him a curveball. And Grace says, I can't throw a curveball.
He tells it just like that. He goes, I don't know how to throw a curveball. So he just laid it right in there. Oh, man, what a fun. I'm so glad that everybody talks all the time. You know, they think it's like a bad thing. I hit my first home run off a position player. I'm like, there is not a better story I get to tell than that one. And Gracie's so great about it that it makes it so much fun.
But actually, Rossi, there is a better story to tell. And Jeff, you were there. So ask him about the home run that you saw him hit, his last homer.
Game 7,
oh, man.
Progressive Field, Chicago Cubs, Cleveland, then Indians. I mean, yeah, maybe some people say it's funny you hit your first home run off of a position player, but there's nothing more iconic than what you did, your final home run in Game 7 to give the Cubs a World Series after 100-plus years. That is just unbelievable, and I think the best, quote-unquote, career walk-off home run, your last home run, and then you're done. You retire.
That was definitely a cool one. Well, you know, I think the story goes back the inning before when I came in. I let 2 runs in. I almost got Rizzo killed on a swinging bunt from Jason Kipnis. Threw that in the stands at second and third, and then I let that ball get by me. It kicks off my mask. John Lester, we weren't supposed to throw strike breaking balls to Francisco Lindor. It's crazy watching him and the postseason he had, and knowing how young he was when we played in 16. Him and Jose Ramirez. It's really cool to watch those guys perform still today. But so John knows, and he shakes to that breaking ball to Lindor, and he must have thrown like a 30-footer. So I tried to get tall, hits me on the mask. I go to kicks off. I go to get up. I stumble over my own feet. I go back. 2 guys saved. Kipnis scores from second, and I'm like, wait a minute. I just got in this thing, and I was supposed to be the defensive guy, and I just let 2 runs in. So I'm trying to calm down in the dugout. I'm up second, and sure enough, get to face Andrew Miller, who I know well, and one of the best pitchers in the game at that time. And I remember getting in the box, and the heart rate was still up, and I was trying to slow down. He threw me a curveball. I swung through. A slider I swung through, and then another one I swung through. So it's 0-2, and he threw me a fastball. I spread out and got in my 2-strike approach, and he threw me a fastball. There was a ball up and away, and I saw that really well because I had went in my 2-strike approach and slowed everything down, simplified everything, choked up. And so I'd done a little bit of homework before watching some video, thinking like, okay, there's guys I'm going to face in the bullpen. Andrew could be one of those guys. So I noticed a lot, and I caught Andrew in Boston, and I noticed a lot that he shook to the fastball. Everybody knows slider's his pitch, but he liked to shake to the fastball. So the 1-2 pitch, he gets the sign and shakes, and I'm like, there it is, just sell out the heater. If he'd have thrown me a slider, I'd have missed it by 9 feet. But he threw me a heater right into my wheelhouse down low, and I touched it, and it's one of those, you don't feel in that moment. So it's going, and I'm like, okay, I was choked up. I simplified. I don't know if this is going out. And I see Rajay Davis sizing it up. He's going back, just sizing it up. And I'm like, if he catches this ball, I'm just going to run right out the right field gate and just go ahead. There's my retirement party right there. So it just kept going, and he climbed the fence, and it went over his head, and then I think I blacked out while I went around the bases for a minute. Can't believe I just went deep, and all of a sudden started thinking about, we got 3 or 4 innings left, and still need to get a lot of outs.
Jeff, David Ross is the only player in Major League history to hit a home run in Game 7 of the World Series and then retire. Rossi, serious question, did you ever think, hey, I can still hit, I'm going to keep playing, or did you say, no, that's it?
Tim, I didn't think I could hit when I was playing, okay? Listen, there's a lot of times I drug my bat back to that dugout. I was fine not doing that. But, it's just kind of cool still when I watch it. The oldest guy to hit a home run in Game 7 at 39 and, just really weird stuff that you don't ever think about till you're done. But, no, I think the only thing that crossed my mind of coming back ever was we didn't have Schwarber in the postseason until right at the World Series. So knowing how good he was and having be without him all year and all those guys coming back, I knew that the team was going to be really good next year. If we didn't win the World Series, then maybe I would think about it. But I had made up my mind. That was such a journey the whole year, how guys treated me, how the fans treated me. So blessed to be a part of that group. That was a special, special group.
It's funny, David, because I went to Game 2 of the NLDS between the Phillies and the New York Mets. And, just amazing finish to that game, a walk-off win in Philadelphia. And I called my dad on the way home, and he says, well, that has to be the best playoff game you've ever been to. And I said, no, it's not. And we're going to get David Ross on because he's part of the reason why the best playoff game I ever went to was Game 7. And then, of course, I was at the 18-inning Dodgers-Red Sox World Series game a couple years ago as well. So that was third, but Game 7 of the World Series, unbelievable. And
we did that Red Sox Dodger game. We were there. Remember how we were standing? Yep. We were standing on the side for I don't know how many innings.
11 innings.
11. Yeah, we had gotten out there ready to go on the field, and that game never ended.
Right. We went down on the field in order to be ready to rush on the field, and we sat there for 11 innings. And Travis Kelce, of all people, was in the stands next to us, and I'm sure he's not going to worry about this. Rossi, he had 10 beers in 10 innings. I swear to God. It was unbelievable.
He came up I remember him coming. That's the first time I had met him. I've met him a couple times since then. He's a big baseball fan. I didn't realize it until he talks, but what a nice guy. In that moment, he sat there and talked, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I got to be at practice tomorrow. We'll get there when we get there." So it was wild.
That was great. David Ross. We're going to fast forward from the home run in Game 7 to him coming to work at ESPN, and we had a famous night there in Cleveland, heading the day before the All-Star game, and Rossi did the broadcast on Sunday Night Baseball, and Jeffrey sang God Bless America, or the national anthem that same night. So, Jeff, what happened after the game?
Well, the best part, and we've already told it on the podcast, was Terry Francona told me before singing the national anthem, don't it up. That was his advice for me.
30 seconds before the most stressful moment of his life. That's what he gets from Tito. But, Jeff, it did calm you down, right?
It really did, because it provided me a laughter, and now he's the manager of the Reds, which is just so beautiful, and a former guest on our show now. But
he's a beaut.
I thought this was so – he's great. And I thought that this was so beautiful of you, Rossi, because you had to get on the plane with the then Indians team because they were going to the All-Star game too. So you guys were kind of like hopping in, and you weren't comfortable with this because 8 months before that, you crushed their dreams of breaking their own World Series curse.
That day, I worked with Booney. Booney did that game with us.
Of course.
And that day, I learned so much. But the first interview that ESPN had me do, player interview, was Andrew Miller before that game. Talk about being uncomfortable.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And I was just like, hey, man, thanks for doing this. This is so great. He's obviously an awesome human and had an amazing career. But, I had just done that, and when we had won the year before. But then after that game, to save, time, ESPN put us on the team plane with all the All-Stars that were going to the game. And they had a ton of guys on there and all their coaches from being from the World Series before. So I was so uncomfortable. I was like, Tim, sit behind me, next to me, whatever. and I like got in the corner and was just trying to like, I'm not here. And they're all walking by, just eyeballing. Some couple guys said hi. A couple of guys like, what is David Ross doing on our plane? You know, the team doesn't know.
Right.
And I am like just so mortified and uncomfortable.
Jeff,
did you then throw it to Rajay Davis interviewing Aroldis Chapman on the other side? That is the most uncomfortable interview ever.
First one, and like first player interview I've done.
Jeff,
and we were teammates, thank gosh.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of those like part of the getting into the media and broadcast. He was great. It was a really good interview. But I was definitely and that night Booney grabbed. I did all this prep work for the game. I'll never forget. I had all these stats down and all this stuff and. I'm in the first inning and it's just not coming out smooth. And we go to commercial. He grabs all my sheets of information, grabs them, crumples it up, throws it in the trash. He's like, they want to know what David Ross sees, not what the sheet says.
Wow.
He's like, let him handle the stats. So I was like, and it actually is the best advice I'd gotten. It freed me up to just go and see what talk about what I was seeing. And he helped me a lot that day in Booney.
Jeff,
you ever talked about Booney's warm-up stuff? Did you guys get on him on his grab the tongue?
Yeah, he did that for us on the podcast. He did his Moses Malone from the free throw line impersonation. We laughed for 30 minutes with Booney on the air because I told him I don't want to talk to the Yankee manager. I want to talk to my teammate for 5 years.
Nice,
he could not have been more playful. And Jeff, how many people alerted you? I had no idea that Aaron Boone had such a good sense of humor. Well, of course he does.
He's hilarious.
You just can't let it out when you're the manager of the Yankees.
I had lifelong Red Sox fans texting me,
right.
Oh, I hate that I love him right now. After listening, they were mad that he was so fun and funny on the show.
Right.
He's hilarious.
All right, so back to your career again, Rossi. We can't leave these things out no matter how much they embarrass you. You, I'm sorry, were a backup catcher in your major league career, and a damn good one. But I was at Chicago Cut one night during the World Series, me and Sut, and he's ordering like a $500 bottle of wine. Typical Sut. David Ross walks into the Chicago Cut, this big-time steakhouse, and he gets a standing ovation. You remember that. What was that like?
I'll never forget that. Well, you walk in. I had my mom and dad and my whole family with me at the time, and Dave Flom, who takes care of me so well there, had set us up with a table. My dad, former butcher, owned a meat company, and I grew up around, that lifestyle working for him during the summer. So like the steak at a nice steakhouse is like his dream. So we're going to Chicago Cuts, World Series. We got the off day and everybody's in town, all ESPN, everybody. And we walk in. I've got my little one now who's 9. I've got her in tow with the car seat in one hand. She's going to sit there. My 2 little ones and my wife at the time and my mom and dad. We're walking right through the middle of this restaurant, and these people start clapping, and then all of a sudden they start standing up, and it's like it's again another like I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm a backup catcher, like you said. Like I get treated in that city so well because of those people and what my teammates had said and done for me. I got treated like I was the Anthony Rizzo's, the John Lesters, and I was the 220 backup catcher, but. They love everybody there. It's a lot of great fan bases have that. Boston has that. They know everybody on the team and root for everybody. And it was a special night. Dave Flom took care of me that night, and that was a special little. I'd gotten a lot of standing ovations that postseason or at the end of that year because of retiring, but that was a special one, very unexpected.
Well, you also at Wrigley Field. Do I have this right? That you got a big shout out from Eddie Vedder?
Yeah, Game 5. My favorite World Series game was Game 5 at Wrigley. I knew we were down 3-1 going into that game, and I knew I was starting finally at home. And so just the lead up to that, I had a bunch of people in town. I was super excited about catching at Wrigley in a World Series game. Hadn't been done in a really long time. So being able to start that game, knowing that was my day, I just was super excited. I had a good game. Trevor Bauer still gives me a hard time. He said, I should have thrown you. He threw me all fastballs. I knocked the crap out of it. The wind was blowing in. I got a sac fly. But it was wild. But we come out and Eddie Vedder stands up to sing the seventh inning stretch, and he goes on this, just kind of, what do you call those things, Tim? Nice little speech, I guess, he gave before he sang. And he said, I would give a shout out to, we know he's retiring and we love him. You'll never be forgotten. All this the nicest stuff ever. Right before he sang, and he said, give a shout out to David Ross. And I'm like, what the heck? What life am I living right now? What is going on?
He's one of the great musicians ever. Even I know who he is.
Well, he Hall of Famer, and he's a Hall of Fame human too. We've got to be good buddies, and he's just so nice to me. Calls me, texts me every once in a while. He's just like, we keep in touch. He's a great human.
You're one of the most decorated backup catchers in history, and one of your accomplishments is Dancing with the Stars. Now, you told us all of the stories of Dancing with the Stars, and we laughed forever. But just tell us what that was like. Backup catcher ends up on Dancing with the Stars. How did that happen?
Yeah, they called my agent. I mean, that season with Joe Madden's awesome. And I had just said, no, it's my last year. Jeff, I said yes to everything. It didn't matter. We were going to – we would land in Philly at midnight, and Matt Caesar was like, let's go get Philly cheesesteaks down. This is my area. We'll go do that. And I had never, actually gone down there. So I'm like, cool, let's go. And me, Riz, Dex, C's, we all went down there. As a group of us went down and got cheesesteaks in the middle of the night. Or we did the Rocky Steps in Philly. Or I took our media guys on a helicopter ride in New York and one morning before a game. Just like I had always stayed in my rooms, get ready for the season. And I'm like, I'm going to get out and do things in these cities I'd never done. So I had just said yes to anything that had really come up, and the season ended. What a great year. And Dancing with the Stars had called my agent and wanted to know if I was interested. And obviously my first answer was no. Absolutely not, And the woman that was directing the whole thing just said, can I put you in touch with a guy and you can ask him any questions, just let him tell you his story. I said, sure. I don't mind that. She was very convincing. So she sends me Jerry Rice's number, and Jerry Rice he did not say one negative thing about his experience. He's like, I learned so much about myself. It's one of the best things I've ever done. The people there are great, all this stuff. And so I called my agent back, and I'm like, you know what? Let's try. I'll be on 1 week. I'll get voted off, and I'll go back to my normal life. And that's not how it worked out. It was like we trained for 3 weeks. My partner, Lindsay Arnold, was amazing, a great cameraman. We traveled everywhere together. It was an amazing experience. I learned so much about, my insecurities and my nerves and how to handle the work ethic and how much it takes to get ready. And it was a great experience. I finished second, went all the way to the finals. It was great. Got to hang out with Mr. T, who's one of my childhood idols. That was really cool. They made me take off my shirt. Listen, Jeff, listen to this. There is a professional bull rider who's absolutely shredded. There's Rashad Jennings, an NFL running back, shredded. And Nick Vial, he had just come off The Bachelor, shredded, right? And then this guy who has two thumbs and has love handles. This guy. So they're like, hey, we're going to do a guys versus girls this 1 week, and we're going to take off our shirts. And I'm like, what? We're gonna do what? Like, my kids are watching at home. Their entire school is watching. I'm doing hip gyrations to the camera, these things, and twirling the shirt off and all this stuff. And then I got to drop off my 8-year-old at middle school or at preschool the next day. So it was or lower school it's called. So it was a great experience. It was fun, taught me a lot. I went much further than I ever thought I would. It's a lot of hard work, and I still follow a little bit. I keep in touch with Lindsay really kind of regularly. We text back and forth every once in a while, and she's a great human and family member for life. She got me through that show somehow. I have no idea, but
I have to say, so I'm a country music morning show host. So your dance to Humble and Kind, which is one of the greatest country songs I think of all time, was so good. It was so beautiful. How much choice do you have in picking your songs? Is that kind of chosen for you, or?
Yeah, she does it, and it was themed. We did one thing that was Magic Mike, like that movie where, like,
Channing Tatum takes his clothes off, Dad.
Yeah, takes his clothes off. Yeah,
Probably
I had a Magic Mike dance that I went to. We flew from L.A. to Vegas to watch them rehearse. There was a Magic Mike show there. Watch these guys rehearse and learn all these like different dance steps, and then I had to go and again like just do things that were very uncomfortable, Jeff, very uncomfortable. So I didn't know you were that's cool, you're a country music host. I'm a big country music fan. I just got back. Post Malone's new F1 Trillion, love that.
Unbelievable.
I just got to that concert. He was great.
It's going to win all of the awards for the best country music album. It is crazy how he has entered country music and is paired up with Dad. He's paired up with all of the stars. Dolly Parton, Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, Blake Shelton. Like this, David, it's tough for me because I have to explain to my dad everything in baseball terms. So this would be like, oh gosh, this would be like the best NBA player coming and playing in the major leagues and batting cleanup, right? Like on the Dodgers this year. Like that's how big it is, and he's great. He's a star, and everybody loves him.
He got all the all-stars basically to play with him. So he like played with Judge and Soto and Machado. Like he just eclectic mix. I've gotten to know one of his steel guitar player in Ernest, who he wrote a song with. I got to know them pretty well, and so they played Lester's retirement party. So we met them, and I've known them since he retired. And it's gotten to be – I saw him in Fenway, and I just saw him over in Orange Beach last week. I saw Better on Tuesday night, and I saw Post Malone on Wednesday night and in Fenway. That was a great show.
Oh,
it was a great show, Tim. Yeah.
Amazing.
Now, Rossi, on our podcast this year, Johnny Bench sang for us. Todd Frazier sang for us. Both of them were exceptionally good. Now, do you have any musical ability? We now know you can dance. Can you play anything? Can you sing anything?
Well, you know, I do tend to one of the greatest influence on my life were a guy by the name of Ryan Dempster, and every time I go to his house, it's karaoke night. Me and him in the basement, back and forth, or at a local bar that he knows, and we just go to town. So I wouldn't say I'm good. I can carry a tune, but it's like dancing. I got rhythm. I know where to start, but it's not gonna go high and low. I try to get up there with Brooks and Dunn. I'm gonna be in trouble, you know. So I keep it private a little more, Tim, a little more, just so I can.
What is a karaoke choice for you? What could you do that better than most people could? It's okay.
I'm old school. I grew up on Alabama, so like I love the group Alabama. I sing a lot. I sing Red Dirt Road a lot from Brooks and Dunn. You know, my go-to is Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars. Where I'm in the Uptown Funk you up, Uptown Funk you up. Yeah, we're gonna get the crowd hyped. I just want everybody else singing with me, Tim.
That is my dad's favorite / least favorite song. We were at a wedding and that was playing, and he looks at me and goes, "What does it mean? What is Uptown Funk?"
Hey, I saw him in concert in Vegas. That was a good one too. I've been on like a concert tour.
I saw Bruno Mars in Vegas. I still say to this day, top 5 concert I've ever been to in my life.
Ditto. I don't think I sat down. I danced the entire time. I took my daughter for her 17th birthday, her and her best friend, and we went out there and we saw her and Adele. I mean him and Adele, and it was like 2 nights of like great music. Tim, this just brought up another story. Remember when Pitbull threw out the first pitch of the All-Star game?
You were there! Oh, my God.
You had no idea. Who was it? Eddie said he's a big fan, or was that Carl?
It was Adnan Vert.
Adnan, that's who it was.
Adnan brought him over. Pitbull. I had no idea who he was. And Pitbull says, I understand you're my biggest fan. And I'm thinking, who is this guy? And then he gave me this complicated handshake. I couldn't even understand what it was. Oh, it was so awful. It was so bad. Jeff, the story that has to be told is they ambushed me on Baseball Tonight. They ambushed me on the air doing some ridiculous dance at Aunt Jerry Ann's wedding that you took the video of and passed it along to the producers at Baseball Tonight. And the song I was dancing to was Uptown Funk You Up, which was
Rossi, I got at the end of a Baseball Tonight episode, Dad said he was going to be off for a week. He's not going to be on the show. They're all like, why? He said, I'm going to a wedding. Of course, they asked, do you dance at the wedding? He said, absolutely not. They slid into my Twitter DMs and said, if he dances, you need to take a video. I'm an impressionable 20-year-old at the time. Of course I'm going to take a video, and it ends up blowing up all over ESPN.
Greg Colley has a way to get to people. He saves it. He saves those videos, boy.
Well, he and Adnan are from the same company. Adnan is always looking for the joke, and he just crushed me on. So the story there, Rossi, is the next day, because this goes all over the internet, me and Pitbull. The next day at the All-Star game, Mike Trout, the best player in baseball, comes up to me with this look on his face, and he goes, I heard you met Pitbull yesterday. Is that right? And it was like I was a rock star because I met Pitbull. That's what Mike Trout said to me. I was astonished. I didn't even know who he was, Mr. 305.
It's hard to rattle you, Timmy. It is hard to rattle you. You were rattled that day. I love it. I love it.
All right. Well,
face hurts already. We're just getting started.
Right. Well,
Rossi, I do have one question, because we had Jeff Francoeur on the podcast, and he told us an amazing story of Bobby Cox telling Jeff Francoeur to fake an injury in spring training so Frankie could go play golf with Tiger Woods. And we put it on Instagram, and he said he had never, this is very selfish of us, never told that story. We put it on Instagram, it like exploded. Everybody's saying, Bobby Cox, what a guy, he's the guy. But Bobby Cox gave you advice heading into your managerial career. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, he just said, I called everybody. I tried to talk to as many people as I possibly could. And Bobby is literally, if you ask anybody about Bobby, the first words out of their mouth, he's the best. And he's so simple when it comes to like relatability that it feels like he can relate to everybody. And he just said, he told me a little bit about his journey and how things mapped out for him, and saying, like you take these jobs you get hired to get fired, basically, and to do it your way, like take it all in, do what but at the end of the day, you're the one that is head of the ship, and it's going to fall on you, good or bad. So do what you believe, grow, but stick to your guns, and basically do it your way, which was great advice, because there's just so many different things that get thrown at you. Looking back, and it was really, really good advice.
Rossi, tell the story about when you played for Bobby and you guys were down like 8-0 in the second inning. You told me that story. Tell it again, please.
Yeah, Bobby had a way of, the manager carries such a presence, no matter whether they're young or old. I respected the seat. Most guys do. And he would have a way in the food room of just like, hey, Rossi, way to go. You hadn't seen him all day, and I hadn't played in 5 days. Brian McCann's the starter, and you leave like, way to go. What did I do? Well, at least the manager, I'm in good grace with the manager, things are well. I hadn't got a hit in a month, but we're all fine, And I got a day game in Atlanta, and Roy Halladay was pitching, and he was carving. I was 0-for-4 with 4 punch outs. And I may have fouled off 2 balls. It was not a good day. And I'm dragging my bat back to the dugout, pissed off. We're getting our butts kicked. And he, right as you walk by me, passed me on the butt. I was like, man, Rossi, that guy's nasty today. And I'll never forget how that made me feel. And just I was so down on myself. And he was like, no, give credit to the guy on the mound. He did a great job. He's doing a great job. Has nothing to do with you. that guy's nasty today. He's making everybody look bad. So it just was a mindset flip when you know your manager isn't down on you or just the awkward silence. It's just something like, man, that guy's nasty. I've tried to realize how much that affected me mentally to stay positive about myself, because I think this game is a game of failure. We're going to go through ups and downs, especially as a backup. And the fact that he gave credit to the guy on the mound made me turn and a little bit of like, maybe I don't suck so bad. That guy was really good out there.
Well, Rozzy, I have to ask this because we had Johnny Bench on the podcast earlier this year as well. Obviously, both of you spent your time as catchers. My dad asked this just journalistic beauty of a question, asking Johnny Bench, can you still get in a squat? And all Johnny Bench said was, why? So granted, he's in his 70s. You're 47.
Yeah.
Can you still get down like you used to?
Yeah, I can squat. I tell everybody I can squat. I don't know if I can get back up. I can squat. I can definitely squat. You know what I'd hate to try to do? I think about a lot. I would hate to try to block a baseball. You know, like getting up and the guy on third, 2 outs, and the 0-2 breaking ball is going to be in the dirt. Timmy, I don't know if I mentally I can get to that place to make sure that ball doesn't get by me.
But Rossi, you did that 1 billion times. But once you're done doing that, you don't want to go back. Agreed?
No doubt. No. Well, and 2, you realize if you stop, if you don't use it, you lose it. Like
right.
That's a true statement. Because I don't know, like I joke with everybody. I don't pick up a bat too often because my last one was a Game 7 homer. I'm not doing that one. But the catching stuff would be fun. I'd like to catch a pin. I probably couldn't be down there very long, but I'd like to catch some bullpens. That was like my fun time is back behind. I love that. The cat and mouse of calling a game. And you know what I almost put on? I hadn't really done too much social media in a while. And Tom Brady the other day connected with some autograph company put out, he said the greatest wristband that's ever been worn, and it was his wristband from the Falcons game when they came back from that deficit, whatever the score was. And I have my wristband from Game 7, and I want to put it up against, like, hey, I don't know if yours is as great as this one, big dog. This one lasted 7 games, Like I got the one from Game 7 of the World Series, so. But I didn't have the guts to put it on social media. And I'm not talking trash to Tom Brady. He gave me, talking about a cool guy, when we won the World Series in Boston in 2013, that offseason, I'm out golfing, and my wife at the time calls me and says, hey, you just got a package from Tom Brady. And I'm like, well, what is it? Like, open it, She opens it up, and I still have them. I have these red Ugg slippers that he sent everybody on the team, the right size and everything. Like, I still wear them around Christmas time, these red Ugg slippers. And with this handwritten note that said, congrats, kick back and relax, you've earned it. So it was like,
wow.
Rossi, how do you know him, though? When you played for the Red Sox, did you get to know him when he was with the Patriots?
The only time, I know we're on a semi-clean podcast, but Jeff already cussed. So we're running out of the tunnel, and we're running out of the tunnel after we won behind the team. The Red Sox had to run out for the Patriots game. And they did the whole coin toss, and we got to sit on the side for a minute, and then they started. And I said, what's up to Gronk? And I said, what's up to Brady? The only time I've met him. And I was like, go f*** some shit up. He pounds me and goes, I like you, buddy. I like you. So he has no idea who I am. He must have called the clubhouse guy, got everybody's size, and sent him off. But what a pro move that was. I've never heard of anything like that. And I still have these slippers. If I ever run into him, I'm going to have to get them sent out to me and have him sign them. But
wow.
Really cool gesture from him to go through all that trouble just to send slippers all over the country.
Oh, that is priceless.
Well, I think everybody in Chicago would vote that your wristband is better than Brady's. I would say so. No doubt about it.
No doubt. New England, Chicago's bigger than New England, right? I don't know. I don't know what the population is. But
I think you're right.
Right, and that was one of Brady's 40 championships he won. one, okay?
That's
This was
right.
the first one for Chicago in 100+ years.
A little
Totally
more rare.
different.
That's right. That's right. And it says in there, no strike breaking balls till Lindor. We can't have hitting over strike breaking balls.
Well, Rossi, we could keep you for another 3 hours, but we got to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a blast here. Jeff, this is just what it was like when we worked together. We're watching the game. Rossi is teaching us all in the room how the game's played, and then every other word we're laughing. We laughed and we learned. It was great.
Well, it's a pleasure being with you guys. What a great show. And I'm so thankful you called, Tim, and had me on, man. Miss you.
Thank you so much, David Ross, for being our guest. He is so funny, Dad. That was such a great grab to talk World Series. Love David Ross. Thank you for being our guest today. And, of course, we remember his Game 7 home run. Then he retired right after that, only player to do that. And, Dad, I'm thinking back now to my time growing up, my first ever World Series game, 1999, at the old Yankee Stadium. Tino Martinez hit a grand slam in one of the games and the game I was at, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Absolutely. And the old Yankee Stadium was like no other venue in the history of baseball. They played 100 World Series games at the old stadium. That's how great the Yankees were all of those years. And yes, since we've been talking a lot about grand slams on this episode because of Nelson Cruz and, of course, Freddie Freeman, he hit the grand slam off of Mark Langston, who had given up one grand slam in his career. It was to Dick Schofield, who was a little shortstop who hit a grand slam off him. And there was the big controversy was he had actually struck Tino out, and the umpire didn't give him strike three, and then Tino hit the next pitch over the right field fence. And then the next morning, you, Mom, and Kelly got on a train and went back while I finished the World Series, and Kelly was weeping when she got on the train. She was like, 8 years old. So, but it was great. You were there, and you saw a historic grand slam yourself.
So to everybody listening, thank you so much as always. And next week we will have our final episode of the 2024 regular season, but that doesn't mean we're going anywhere. We're going to be keeping you updated throughout the off season, maybe not weekly, but you're going to be hearing from us, of course. So make sure to follow and subscribe and follow us on social media at Great Game or What to see some videos as well. Dad, another great World Series. Let's do it. I'll talk to you next week.
All right.
I'll text you later. We talk all the time, but I'll talk to you on the podcast next week.
Can't wait, Jeff.
Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for being a part of our family.